and welcome back to Community Couch Time, a daily talk show where we talk about things that are important, things that are happening in our community and our state, in this country, and internationally. Oftentimes, the topics that we discuss are ones that others aren't talking about. And the question is, why aren't we? Hello, and welcome to Community Couch Time. I am so excited. I have a wonderful guest today, Matt Sedillo, who's going to share some of his background and also like the power of poetry and literature on the Chicano movement. And so before we invite him on to share, some of his amazing knowledge with us, he's dropped some knowledge with us. I'm gonna kind of share a little bit of his background with his biography. Matt Sedillo has been described by many as the best political poet in America, as well as the poet laureate of the struggle by academics, poets, and journalists alike. He has appeared on C-SPAN and has been featured in the Los Angeles Times, among other publications. He has spoken at Casa de las Americas in Havana, Cuba, at numerous conferences and forums such as the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity in American Higher Education, and at over 100 universities and colleges, including the University of Cambridge, among many others, including my high school classrooms where you've been twice, in Hawkins and at Roybal. He is the current literary director of the Daw Center for the Arts and the author of Mowing Leaves of Grass. Thank you and welcome, Matt. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So I have really two like kind of profound questions, and I'm really excited to hear your responses to them. And so really, I wanted to ask you about kind of like your background with how you came to love literature and to be a writer, to become a poet, and then how you see poets and writers in this greater Chicanx movement that still exists to this day. Some argue that it isn't, but I argue that it's still alive, maybe not as vibrant as it was in the 60s and 70s. And so I want to hear your perspective on that.
Well, I think that how did I come to become a writer? Well, my mother took me to the library as a child very often, and so I could say that I remember that she would take me to the library and she'd take me to theater in the park and stuff like this. So when I was very young, I think about 3 or 4 years old, I remember having gone to see Hamlet, and then when we came back, she said, before you play with those toys, you got to put those little toys away. And I said, Mother, speak to me no more. And I was quoting the play. So at 3 or 4 years old, I was quoting him. I was quoting Shakespeare. So I have my mother to thank for that. But I knew that I had to get a job when I got older. So it was more influenced my father. And I decided that I wanted to be the president because that was the best job imaginable. And because he was the boss of everybody, I wanted to be the boss. And so, but when I was about 7, my father told me that, I couldn't be president. And the reason I couldn't be president was because we're Mexican. I thought he was confused. I was like, no. I was born in the Alhambra Hospital. You're thinking about my grandma. He's like, no, you don't understand what I mean. And then, and so then I found that out, and I was pretty upset about that. So I didn't want to be president anymore. He was like, well, you could be a congressman or something like that, but no, I was like, it was over. The idea that I couldn't be something. So then after that, I wanted to be a writer, right? And I wasn't gonna sully my writing with politics. I was gonna write about the human experience in its most blah 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 blah. Very pretentious at like the age of 9, right? And so I'm working on writing. So I started working on writing a novel probably around the age of maybe 11 or 12. And I worked on this throughout my whole teenage years. And I didn't want to write anything that was political. I didn't want to write any political propaganda. I don't know where I got these ideas from, but that was my idea. And then things happen in life, and I started working around 17. I got a job right before I graduated high school, and then things happened more, and I went to go with my father, and we had a falling out, and I found myself in another city in a very desperate situation. And I didn't know what to do, and I was living in my car, and I saw a job, and all my life I heard how smart I was, and here I was in this horrible situation. I couldn't figure it out, so I went to the library and I started reading all stuff about political economy. And then I was like, okay, I'm putting away my dreams of being a bourgeois artist. Now I'm a very serious proletarian organizer. So I'm going to march back into this Lowe's, and I'm going to organize them. And they may not like me, but they're going to respect me, which is a really ridiculous attitude. But that was my attitude. And I read somewhere that in order to win their respect, you have to work harder than everybody, and then you'll earn their respect, then they'll listen to you, which is actually the opposite of what happened. I worked so hard. I hurt my back. I hurt my legs. I was working harder than everybody. I was doing the job with like 3 people, and everyone hated me because because it just made the managers want to demand more of everyone else. And so that was that experience. And then then I came back home, and then I came back to California, and then I met some people, and they took me to open mic, and I remember going to open mic, and I seeing all these people, and I saw someone do a political poem, and I'm like, I know how to do that. I know exactly how to do it. I know exactly what he did. He introduced an idea, he foreshadowed some other idea, and then he delivered it. I know exactly how to do it in that time format. I can come back here, I'm gonna do this, and they may not like me, but they're gonna respect me, which is ridiculous attitude. Imagine going to a party, you may not like me, but you're gonna respect this robot. I think that was my attitude. And so then I went in, and I kind of and things went really well, and things have been going really well ever since. That was probably about 13 years ago, and I just got to say that it's been a real interesting journey, because it's been really kind of the combination of these two paths. Like, I would never want to be president now. That's not part of the way I think of the world. But this idea of being a political figure and this idea of being an artist, they kind of merged into the life I've had for the last over a decade now. So that's kind of how it happened.
That's really wonderful. And so I really wanted to see your perspective, or hear about your perspective on like the power of words, the power, like what power, not just in your own words and your own performances and your own publications, but in those like you, right? Because you are a member of a community of revolutionary folks who are doing, writing, who are doing poetry. Like, what is your power in this movement to make change for our community and other oppressed communities?
Well, it's interesting though, because the book came out, started drawing all these comparisons, and it drew a lot of comparisons to Roque Dalton, to Mary Baraka, to June Jordan, and to Bertolt Brecht, and Jose Montoya, a few others. And the interesting thing about it is, if you read those people's writings, they write nothing alike. Their writing styles are very, very different from one another. So it really, when it gets compared, and they write nothing like me. I mean, maybe a little bit like Baraka, but most of them write nothing like me. So the comparison is not one made on the basis of style. It's made on the basis of substance, right? So and that's what we see. Every generation is going to produce people who are going to fight the set of conditions they're under. And so to be a person like that and hopefully inspire a further generation, the kind of a link in a chain, is all I can really hope to do. It's like, all I can really hope to do is to write the best work I'm capable of, and have that inspire whoever comes next, as whoever has inspired me, or these different people that, even if I don't know anything like them, just to be compared to them is such a deep honor. Hopefully I can do that to other people. And so that's kind of how I kind of see myself in this thing. And when we look at it, we look at this question of poetry specifically, oftentimes you'll have these rallies, right? And at the rally, there'll be the speaker, and there'll be the organizers, or whatever, and they'll have the artist, and everyone will say the artist is the most important, blah, 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 but they will not act in that way. They will treat the artist as a kind of a side act, and if we have time for it, we'll do it, and if we don't, they're out. But the reality is that's kind of like how things are in reality. That kind of needs to change. But the reality of this is that, like Jose Marti is remembered as not just a revolutionary, but as a poet. Corky Gonzalez, he wrote this poem, Yo Soy Joaquin, which is considered like foundational to the Chicano movement. So, and this goes across the board. I mean, look at Mary Baraka and what he did, and you look at and the role he played in actual politics, and the actual books he wrote in terms of his political thought. What's his name? Pablo Neruda, was exiled in Chile. So the poets are very, very, very important political figures. I mean, there's no question about this. It's almost ridiculous to even have to say it. I mean, not any questions about it. It's almost like, the fact that we're studying this is just kind of like, history clearly demonstrates how important this work is.
Right. Thank you so much for doing that. If there are folks out there watching that are also interested in becoming writers or becoming poets, is there any advice that you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, like, well, in terms of just, in terms of, the kind of the inspirational part. I mean, I suppose you should write about what you care about. Like, you start there, write what you care about, and write it to the best of your ability. Now, what is the best of your ability, and how can you sharpen your abilities? Is a different question. So, really, it's very important to separate those two things in your mind. When people talk about finding a voice, what they mean is they mean the totality of everything. But your voice and your passions are separate. So, find your passions, hold on to your passions, never let those go. But as far as your voice is concerned, what you need to do is, you really need to understand that your voice is literally how you sound, and how you sound as a writer are based upon the choices you make, the tricks you use, the different little things you employ, and you need to really become a student of your own mind, student of your own best impulses. Understand why you did these particular peculiar things you did, and in that way you can develop a style that is unique to you. And once you develop a style, you take that style and turn it into discipline. And once you turn into discipline, you turn to a standard of excellence that you hold yourself to every time out. And in this way, you will become the world's leading expert as to why you are excellent. And in that way, no one can ever discredit you, and you will never, ever, ever be hungry for validation. You will know better than anyone as to why you are great, as to why you are excellent, as to what it is you are bringing to the world. So what you need to do is really move the genius of your subconscious mind when you're in this weird flow state to your conscious mind. Understand why it is you are great. Why you are great can be a mystery to the audience, but it should never be a mystery to you.
That is so awesome. And in the vein of that, having discipline, I can see behind you that you've got a whole board of Post-its. Is that something that that you're putting together, some type of work that you're working on that you're planning back there?
Yeah, yeah, that's I'm about to, those about to come down. I'm about to put a new set of post-its, but those are that's how I wrote the novel. I mean, I posted out, like, each three squares represents one chapter. So this happens here, this happens here, this happens here, this happens here. And when I look at it that way, I can see, okay, how much space am I giving for foreshadowing? How much space am I giving for a setup, a build-up, and and a climax? A setup, a build-up, climax, setup, build-up, climax, and all these like mini arcs that take place within the entire novel. And so I can see, like, okay, something began in chapter 1, it pays off in chapter 12. Something began in chapter 3, it pays off in chapter 16. Something began in chapter 7, it paid off in chapter 9. Like I can, I can do all these kind of little things to kind of disrupt the rhythm and disrupt expectations.
I love that.
That's all a question of style. All a question of style.
Yeah, I love that. That's really powerful. And so this novel that you've completed writing, when should we expect to be able to pick one of those books up?
Hopefully next year. Hopefully next year. Things are going well with the agent, with my literary agent. So it should be sometime next year. But again, this back here, this is all a question of developing. What I like to say is like tools that are smarter than I am. And a tool smarter than I am could just be, it could just be like a piece of paper. It can be a several piece of paper laid out in front of me. And what I mean by smarter than I am, obviously I'm the one that created this, but when I say using tools smarter than I am, it means that it can hold more information at one time than I can. I can't have this many thoughts, right, but I can look at a board filled with this many thoughts, yeah, and I can see how these thoughts interplay with each other, and I can move them around. But I need them in front of me. You should never sit down from a blank page. It's never a good idea. Always do like some prep work. Always do prep work ahead of time. And so even if you're writing an essay, like, okay, before you write an essay, do an outline of what happens in each paragraph before you even start. It's going to make writing the paragraph. It's going to make writing the essay so much easier.
You're going to make a lot of teachers, a lot of writing teachers very happy with that. Thank you so much. So is Flower Song Press going to be publishing your novel?
No.
No. So Flower Song Press published your book of poetry.
Yes, and they're going to publish the next book of poetry too, which will have this year.
Oh, excellent. So before we say goodbye, do you think you could maybe recite one of your favorite poems for us?
Sure. This one's spoken. The summer born in summer homes and palatial groves, where pain was always ever unfold from the page of secret gardens read from groves, but not I. See, I come from the stock of starry-eyed astronauts who keep the night sky, big dreams and wide eyes, always running down the devil's highway through occupied America, all the way back to house on Mango Street and all the books she wants to read. Raised on handball off the back wall of Habana de Rio Born, east the river, post Mendez versus Westminster, one generation with red lines and diplomas that were signed those dreams. And that skin need not apply. See, I come from struggle. And if my story offends you, as long as you made the mistake of seeking your reflection in my self-portrait, see this. Well, it's going to be about you. Because some are born to the common core, whose selected faces grace the pages of doctrine discovered and ages explored. World hardships crash against new shores, New England, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York. For others, pushed off Turtle Island, Aslan, do not call this brown-skinned immigrant. Child of the sun, son of the conquest, Mexicano blood, running through the veins east side of Los Angeles. Do not tell him, and when they tongue the song will best be sung, do not tell me who I am. Because I was raised just like you. Miseducating some of those very same schools off lessons and legends of honest Indians and Christian pilgrims and a nation of immigrants all united in freedom. This is until we pulled aside my white friend, pointed directly at me and said, Scott, I judge you by the company you keep and you spend your time with this. And that's Sam Stories, 1846. The Adventures of Uncle Sam, the stick-up man, a wetbag. Show me your papers, I'll give you your labor, the melting pot was never made for the hands that clean it. The American dream has always come at the expense of those who tucked it in. You don't know that. So don't teach it. Could write you a book, but you won't read it. So what's about you? In 1492, in the Treaty of Guadalupe, California missions and Arizona schools, these racists as racist kids in cities that bear our names, but you can learn from the days from Ferdinand to Minuteman, from Ohio to Alamo, Bull, to Joaquin the Indian, to Liz and me, from Amos the 1863, trying to bury us. Didn't know we were seeds, Canadian minds, they don't strike the gun down, Mr. Bonner, Joaquin Murrieta, that's Alitas, Bob Brazy, Zapatistas, Rich Nixon, the Napoleon, from Beckenbauer to Houston, from Military Republic to Christopher Columbus, all the way down to Donald Trump. We didn't cross the borders crossed us. Who you calling immigrant? Pilgrim.
Matt, I swear I've heard you recite that several times, many times, and it's powerful and gives me that chicken skin every single time. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. So that was Matt Sedillo.
And today he shared so much with us, his passions, his power to use language to change the world. So proud to have friends like Matt Sedillo, artists, artivists, poets, writers who make an impact in our communities every single day. And so now our community couch time discussion question is, what significant impact can poets and writers have on impacting change in the world? What is your passion that you believe the world could benefit from knowing more about? Tell us. We're interested. We want to know. Thank you, and in la quech.